What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope, whoa. What happened? Whoa, there we go. Let's see. Are we, let's fix this. Let's double check to make sure we're live. That was an interesting 2 seconds for a moment here. Let's see here. I'm making sure we're live because that was a crazy freak out. We are live. Let's see. Let's put my hand up. Double check this. Yeah, I think we're good. Okay. that was pretty wild for those of you who were with us live at the very beginning here. And double checking. Yeah, okay, we made it. So, all right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome one and all to a conversation about the Dallas Cowboys. My name is RJ Ochoa. You can follow me on X, Instagram, and Threads at RJ Ochoa, TikTok, RJ.Ochoa. Search for RJ Ochoa on Facebook, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, whatever. You can watch me live every single Tuesday and Thursday here in the Bleacher Report at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. Today, the very beginning of this, if you catch the show on demand, which you can do in the Bleacher Report app and access on the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel as well, as soon as I started it, I hit start, let's go, whatever, and started talking, and everything like froze and freaked out. So I refreshed, and all is good. We were still live. So glad to see that the internet did not completely and totally break on me. But apologies for the weird start. It is Tuesday, May 27th, 2025. Hope all is well wherever you are. Hope you're happy, safe, and healthy, that you had a happy Memorial Day. Thank you. Eternal gratitude to all those who have served our country, and the family, friends, relatives, loved ones of people who have served our country. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Your service is not lost on us any day, not just on Memorial Day, obviously, but thank you very, very, very much. Obviously, with the holiday, our weeks are kind of, it's always tough, right? When you got to go back into work and you're figuring out how to kind of make the most out of a short week. I will say that the best 3-day weekend is when the third day is Monday, not Friday, because you go from the 3-day weekend into the 4-day work week. So here we are. I have already today, by the way, gotten a lot of questions about my shirt representing the GOAT, the greatest running back of all time, Emmitt Smith, as you can see here. Got this from my friends at Game Changers. You can see that right here. If you're watching this on YouTube, I will put the link to their Dallas Cowboys collection in the description down below. I don't know what's going on again. Let's see if we're going to make it, if we're going to survive. Are we here? Are we good? Are we? Oh, there we go. I think we're back now. Okay, so we are good. Okay. I'm not certain what's happening. I don't know what's going on. Hopefully we're able to carry up. It automatically mirrors me, so I have to unmirrored. Perfect. Now we're back. All right. No idea what's going on. No idea why we're freaking out. Hopefully nothing can happen or will happen between now and the end of the show. But like I said, thanks to my friends at Game Changers. This is awesome. I'll put the link to their Cowboys collection in the description below on the YouTube side of things. I have a ton of Game Changers Dallas Cowboys teachers. They have a lot of awesome ones, but I had to get Emmitt Smith, of course. Go Gators. All right. That being said, today we're going to do something interesting. Today we're going to have a little fun. Today we're going to look at something that someone else did that served as a point of inspiration, if I'm being completely and totally honest with you. These are the kinds of conversations that are a lot of fun to have this time of year. The NFC East mixtape, which is a podcast I used to co-host with Brandon Lee Gowton and sometimes still do. It's kind of in a weird space right now. We used to love to do NFC East all-star teams and NFC East, best to worst and things like that. And so, in case you're unaware, Blogging the Boys is the site I run, Dallas Cowboys website for SB Nation, but we obviously have websites that cover all the teams, even though that's dumb, right? Like, why would you care about any other team? People do, and people run those sites, and people participate in them. And recently, our friends at Big Blue View, which is our New York Giants website at SB Nation, did an exercise that Well, what's rather interesting, I think, is maybe the kind way to put it. So let's take a look at this here. This is bigblueview.com. This is SB Nation's content home for New York Giants content. Obviously, the title of the article this came out over the weekend was Did the Giants Close the Talent Gap? Ranking the NFC East offenses position by position. I love this idea. I love the spirit of this. I love saying, okay, let's rank them top to bottom, best to worst, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so they start off with the quarterback. And before I get to that, they did the whole thing, and we'll scroll down and check it out. But if somebody was deemed to be the best at a certain position, they got 4 points, right? So whoever the best quarterback was, that team got 4 points. Whoever the second best quarterback was, that team got 3 points. Obviously, the team with the most points across all offensive groups at the end of the exercise was deemed to be the best total offense on aggregate in the division. I think that point is understood. Here are their quarterback rankings. All right, I'm going to zoom in so you can see this. This is as close as I can get. They believe that Jaden Daniels is the best quarterback in the NFC East. I'm not going to fight this severely or heavily. I think you can make that argument. I think that it's fair to say you want to see more. I think it's fair to say that Jalen Hurts won the Super Bowl. I also think it's fair to say that Jalen Hurts is unique relative to what the Eagles ask of him, and he certainly has flaws. I mean, right, there's a lot of nuance and context to this conversation, but we're not here to talk about this part. We're here to talk about this part because this person considers, the Big Blue View person considers the New York Giants to have a more stable operation, a more preferable group of quarterbacks than what the Dallas Cowboys have. Now, look, I'm going to take this off your screen for a second because I know there are some of you out there who do not like Dak Prescott. And by some of you, I mean some of you Dallas Cowboys fans. I wish that we could all get on the same page. I wish that we could all back the quarterback that plays for our favorite team. I wish that we could be unified in that sense, but I gave up on that a very, very long time ago, right? Whoever is the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys is going to carry the burden, right? It's just kind of what comes with the dinner. Fine. I'm not here to bemoan that. That is what it is. That being said, even if you are Dak Prescott's biggest critic, even if you think he sucks, even if you think you're clever and call him trash Prescott or whack Prescott, even if you say that and you're like, I really got him. If you're one of those people, I think even you can acknowledge that there is no way on earth that the New York Giants have a better quarterback room, better quarterback operation. There is no way, no how whatsoever that you would trade lives with the New York Giants from a quarterback standpoint. Now, let's take a look at the analysis to be completely and totally fair to the process, all right? So let's scroll down. This was the part in question. Let's zoom in. Let's leave this highlighted. There you go. Zoom in so you can see. All right. I'm going to read it verbatim because we got a lot to get to, but let's kind of blitz through this. The number 3 spot, talking about the Giants being ahead of the Cowboys here, is controversial. But should it be? It should. Let me preface this by saying no Giants quarterback is as talented as Dak Prescott. I don't know that this is a preface as much as it is the entire argument, but whatever. I have praised Prescott for years. He's underrated, cerebrally gifted, and he has above average arm talent. I agree with all these things. Still, he is the highest paid player in NFL history with a $50.5 million cap hit in 2025 and $231 million guaranteed. That's a lot of cash, and his contract has a no trade clause. This is a fair point. We'll get to that in a second here. He's also 31 years old and missed most of last season with a torn hamstring. Also fair. That required surgery. Also fair. I'm a big fan of Prescott, but there's plenty of reason to pause when one looks at his contractual situation. I'm going to take this off your screen for a moment here because I'm going to tell you that if you read this entire article the way that I did, and I wrote about this article in my own article at bloggingthevoice.com, the contractual situation, which is its own thing, isn't referenced relative to any other position group in the NFL, right? Like you could say you would rather have, I don't know, some other wide receiver group than what the Eagles have going on. Say you prefer Washington or whatever, and say, well, AJ Brown and Devontae Smith are both on these big deals, whatever. And I want to take the low, contract hits or whatever. This contractual element is only brought up as a slight relative to Dak Prescott. And even then, even if you consider the contractual thing to be a slight, I would 100 out of 100 times rather take Dak and his contractual slight than be in purgatory with what the New York Giants have going on. But let's consider the perspective here. That brings us to the Giants and why they are ahead of Dallas. I'm reading this verbatim. This isn't something I'm making up here. It's simple. It's simple. The Giants have 2 veteran quarterbacks signed to relatively inexpensive short-term deals and a rookie first-round pick, whom Brian Daboll gushes over. Well, if there's gushing involved. If Dart, talking about Jackson Dart, first round pick, who was so valuable that the Giants almost let him slide out of the first round, by the way, strikes bullseye, going to be a lot of that kind of stuff. Dart, bullseye, whatever. The Giants have a 22-year-old cost-effective quarterback contract on the books. That's true. Nobody's denying that. Plus, New York has a plan, you got to have a plan to allow Dart time to develop, which while also notably playing competitive football with Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston. We will see about that. Dallas takes the 1, New York snags the 2, talking about the point values here. All right, that's enough of this article. Yeah, what on earth? Like, absolutely what on earth to the highest degree. Again, you will never, ever find me acting like there are not cons to Dak Prescott's game, to Dak Prescott's contractual value. I mean, is there more nuance and context to that as well? Like the fact that the Cowboys, dropping the ball is how Dak was able to amass so much leverage to achieve the contractual value that he ultimately has. Yeah, like these things could have literally been avoided by the Cowboys. That's neither here nor there relative to this discussion. If you really believe, if you would rather sign up for life as a Giants fan with what their quarterbacks have going on, by all means, be my guest. The door's right there, my friend. You can take it. You can walk right in. It's not mystery door number 3. It is doorway to hell number 2. You do not want this life. All right, Jackson Dart may ultimately wind up being somebody that is worth gushing over, but to pretend that he is better than the quarterback who the New York Giants have lost 13 consecutive games to is frankly absurd. And I actually think it's difficult and almost impossible to say something that is quote unquote absurd about the NFL on May 27th. And this was actually written on May 24th. And the reason for that is because you can say anything right now, right? There's nothing that can be disproven mostly, right? Like relative to NFL chatter and discussion. I could say something like, I think Kyrie Irving's going to lead the NFL in interceptions this year. I think that's pretty silly and probably not going to happen, but you can't say no way because you don't know. There are very, I would count them on one hand, few things that you can throw out and I'd be like, there's absolutely no way, right? Like even if I were to be like, oh, the Browns are going to win the AFC North, that seems pretty silly, pretty ridiculous. And maybe that's one of the 5, but you get my point. Like most things have possibility because if there is a league of parity in the world right now, at least in the United States from a professional standpoint, it's the NFL. But to suggest, to call it simple, the fact that the New York Giants with Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and strike a bullseye Jackson Dart are a better option than Dak Prescott, and even Joe Milton, honestly, is just not a walk I can go down. But I wanted to conduct this exercise myself, and I wanted you to have an idea of the context of kind of what into my general thought process. So let's take a look. We're going to utilize the same format here. I've got, I don't know what happened here. Let's put this to the one column left. Let's see, one column left. Can you see this now? There we go. I don't know why it does this weird screen share thing. But all right, so position, quarterback, running backs, offensive line, wide receivers, tight ends. Again, I'm actually going to change this so that it makes more sense. 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, so if a team has 4 points, it means that they're worth the most. If a team has 2 points, it means they're the second most. You get the point. So let's start with the quarterback here. I'm fine. I don't like it, but I'm fine saying that I think that Jalen Hurts is the best quarterback in the division right now. You win the Super Bowl, you give yourself, armor, indestructible armor. It is what it is. So I'm willing. Let's just put the teams. Eagles is much simpler. So we're gonna go Eagles. Look, I am in no way. This is a little bit of homerism. I recognize this, and you people the whack Prescott people, you people are gonna say no way, no how, whatever. I fully recognize how wonderful of a season Jayden Daniels had. I'm very interested to see year 2. And I think that we're all forgetting, and we've talked about this many times recently, that Dak Prescott was playing MVP level football just a year and a half ago. All right, we're willing to just throw that away because he plays for the Cowboys and memes and screaming and whatnot. So I'm going to put the Cowboys right here, and I'm going to put the Commanders right here, and I'm going to put the Giants where they belong, and that is in the cellar. All right, we're going to go to the running backs here. And I don't know how you could say anything else, right? Like, there's no question. Let me zoom in here. I don't like being so far away from you all. There we go. All right. So far, the Eagles are leading the way. Who's got the 3rd best running backs in the NFL? I'm glad you asked. Let's take a look. Let's look at our friends at Our Lads. Here are the depth charts. Obviously, the Eagles are first, so we don't have to worry about them. But let's move on to a different team. NFL depth charts. Let's go to the New York Giants. The Giants, by the way, were deemed to have the 2nd best running back group in the division, according to our friends at Big Blue View. So the Giants, from a running back standpoint, have Tyrone Tracy Jr., Devin Singletary, Cam Scatterboo. Hurts my heart. Forks up, baby. that's what they have going on. Not a bad group. All right, let's take a look at Washington because we know what Dallas has, obviously, without question. Let's go NFL. NFL depth charts. These pop-ups just getting me. All right, here we go. Washington, Brian Robinson Jr., Austin Eckler, who's definitely a little bit injured, Jeremy McNichols. All right, I'm going to say something controversial here, and it's that that Washington, that the Commanders are number 2. All right, I think that Tyrone Tracy is a fine player, but I think the best running back in this overall group between the Giants and the Commanders is probably Brian Robinson Jr. Maybe you think Austin Eckler has the highest ceiling. I don't think it's responsible to suggest that he stays healthy. That being said, I'm going to say the Commanders have the second best group. I'm not going to give that to the Giants. I am going to give them number 3. The Cowboys obviously have a lot of question marks at the running back position, and maybe you think that Jaden Blue or somebody or whatever can turn into something for the Cowboys in 2020. Oh, I don't know. I have a 0 there. There we go. But it's fair to put the Cowboys last. So this is where we're at through everything. Now, look, we're gonna go ahead and put the Eagles right here. This kind of goes without saying, like the Eagles' offensive line is the best in the NFL. So here we are. The Eagles, shocker here. The Eagles have an amazing roster. The Eagles are perfect. The Eagles are wonderful. They're geniuses. Hi, Roseman, all this stuff. That being said, offensive line time. Let's go back to the depth charts. It's probably the best way to do this. So let's go. We've already got Washington's pulled up here from a tab standpoint. Here we go. Let's zoom in a little bit here. I don't know how you're going to convince me that Washington does not have the second best offensive line in the division. Now, this exercise at Big Blue View broke things down from a interior standpoint and a tackle standpoint. They deemed the Eagles to have the best of both. They gave the Cowboys the second best interior lineman, excuse me, and they gave the Giants the second best offensive tackles. I am not going to do that. I think that we have to give Washington credit for the Laramie Tunsil trade. I think if it's simpler to me to evaluate the offensive line overall as an entire group. I'm definitely not putting New York here. I mean, New York might be last, and I know we have some thoughts and some opinions and some hopes for Dallas. I think if we have this discussion a year from now, I think we might be able to put Dallas second and maybe in some world first if Tyler Booker is amazing, if Tyler Guyton takes a step, right? Like it's possible. Like you don't have to squint your eyes too hard to be able to see that. But I don't know how you can say anything other than Washington has the second best offensive line from an overall standpoint in the division. But before we write this down, before we put it, in typed letters to a point that it's irrecoverable, let's look at what the Giants have going on. This is the New York Giants offensive line, per our friends at Our Lads. I mean, I just don't know. I mean, this really feels like splitting hairs to me, but I mean, on some level, but I'm inclined to give I'm inclined to lean Washington. God, this team is so bad. I mean, I'm sorry. I can't believe that you would put Russell Wilson. I mean, whatever. But I'm going to go Washington as the second best offensive line, and I'm going to go Dallas as the third, and I'm going to go the Giants as last once more. This isn't reverse attacking. This isn't anything like that. I think this is fair. So let's go Commanders here. Let's go Cowboys, and let's go Giants once more. Again, I don't know how you can whatever. But so wide receivers is interesting because you have to do a little bit of projecting. That being said, from a duo standpoint, we're talking about obviously AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. I think again they're difficult to surpass. Now we know Dallas. We'll get to them in a moment here. But who do we think New York's top 2 receivers are? Malik Neighbors and Darius Slayton. I mean, is that what we're working with here? Because if that's the case, and we're talking about measuring them against Washington, because I think Dallas might be second here. I think you got to go. We forget. I mean, that Deebo Samuel is a Commander now. So this is what this comes down to. You've got CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. Because let's be honest, the Giants are last year. Let's go ahead and slot them in here. I got to fly in my office. So Giants are last. So this comes down to, do you trust Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel, CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens? And as I say that out loud, it really isn't that big of a conversation. So I'm going to go there. This is our wide receiver group. Tight ends. All right. This is where I think there's some room for some nuance, some room for some conversation. You're talking about Dallas Goedert in Philadelphia, you're talking about Jake Ferguson in Dallas. You're talking about, I suppose, Zach Ertz in Washington. And you're talking about with the Giants, who's the Giants' top tight end on our lads, specifically Theo Johnson is who they're listing. Theo Johnson, I think, is too unproven here. I think Zach Ertz, on some level, I would almost give Zach Ertz the deference over Jake Ferguson, but I think that, at a certain point, age becomes a factor. Experience is also a factor. You can have this conversation both ways. I think this is the same order as wide receivers. Let's go Eagles, Cowboys, Commanders, Giants. Again, the idea that the Giants were in any sort of conversation or competition is just absurd. So ranking, obviously the Eagles are number 1 here. Cowboys have, let's see, 9 points, 11, 12 points. The Commanders have 6, 8, 10, 12. We've got a tie. So we've got a tie for a second between Cowboys and Commanders. Let's do Dallas, Wash. There we go. And the Giants. And I think this, like, if you didn't know anything, right? If you didn't know much else about the division, if I told you that, the Eagles were the best, Cowboys in Washington, let me rephrase this. If all you knew about the division was what happened last year or the last 2 years, I think you'd be like, this kind of makes sense. This kind of passes the smell test, right? The Eagles are clearly the class of the division. Dallas and Washington can kind of go either way based on a number of things. And there's a lot of crossover, by the way, between their roster, thanks to Dan Quinn not being able to let go of the past. And the Giants are kind of, trailing everybody. I don't know how you can feel any other way. And look, the Giants roster is horrible. I know that we've ranked them last in every single place except for running back. And the only reason they are not ranked last at running back is because the Cowboys have refused to treat the position like a real one. The Cowboys have completely and totally believed that running back doesn't matter. And that's fine. It doesn't in a lot of ways, but it does on some level. So if you think I'm being Homer, if you think I'm being way too biased, let's take a look at this whole initial analysis from our friends at Big Blue View. So this is the article once more. This is the quarterback position. They gave the nod to Washington here over Philadelphia. Let's go to the running backs here. Let's zoom in so you can see. They believe the Eagles have the best running back situation. How could you not? Saquon Barkley. Tyrone Tracy outdoes Brian Robinson Jr. Again, I mean, look, I'm a big Cam Scatterboo fan, obviously, and I think that might be able to happen. Fine. I mean, I suppose I could be talked into this. I don't think this is egregious, if I'm being completely and totally honest. Wide receiver was pretty. See, like, I can't do this. I mean, I'm sorry. Like, I'm even if we believe that Malik Neighbors is going to take a serious step, I just can't. I would much rather have what Washington has going on. Even if you think Deebo Samuel's injury prone or whatever, I 100% would rather have Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel over Malik Neighbors and random player on any given Sunday. So that's where I stand at wide receiver. Let's keep going here. Tight end. This was kind of exactly what we said. That's not the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of, but you see what they have. Offensive tackles. Eagles, again, Giants number 2. I think it's if you're doing just offensive tackles, I don't think it's absurd to rank the Cowboys last. And a lot of it is, Terrence Steele hasn't been that good. We're waiting to see Tyler Guyton obviously take a step forward. This isn't crazy, but I mean, look, I'm not ready to believe in Andrew Thomas yet. And again, the Commanders traded for Laramie Tunsil. I mean, that's important. Look, I mean, respectable, yes, but I would take a healthy Andrew Thomas and Illuminor over Tunsil and Coleman. Why? Who would do this? Interior offensive linemen, Eagles, Cowboys, Giants, Commanders. I mean, the Giants aren't. Let's see here. How many times have the Giants been ranked last? Not at quarterback, as we know. Not at running back. Not at wide receiver. At tight end. So one position out of 4 so far. One position out of 5. One position out of 6. You mean to tell me the Giants are the worst in the division, only at 1 out of 6 spots? And these are the final thoughts. In this exercise, the Eagles lead the way, right? There's no doubt about it. I'm in total agreement with this at this point in time. And the Giants are deemed to have the second best offensive roster in the NFC East. Not be the second best team, not have the second most success, have the second best offensive roster. Who believes this? And again, this is a fun conversation to have. I'm grateful for this article. I'm grateful for this author. I'm grateful for this type of thing to, ultimately talk about and react to. Let's read the final summation here. The Eagles missed a clean sweep thanks to Jayden Daniels, and the New York Giants are second. What kind of homer stuff is this? Trust me, the Giants have a lot of work to do to overcome the Dallas Cowboys and Washington Commanders on Sunday. For starters, defeating Dallas would be nice, and not being swept by the division would be just an excellent start. Still, for the silly exercise, the Giants roster on paper isn't deep in the dumpster and is at least in the conversation to compete offensively with the other teams in the division. I just don't know how you can say this. I mean, I really don't. I want to believe in parity, like I said, and I want to believe that there's an opportunity for one team to surprise or one team to impress or one team to whatever. But based on everything we know about the Giants at this point in time, we've talked so much about how the improvements the Cowboys have made this offseason and relative to expectation, that being the expectations over the course of the last few years, right? The Commanders have clearly improved. The Commanders traded for two really important offensive pieces in Laramie Tunsil and Deebo Samuel. In fact, if we ranked the moves that every NFC East team made on offense over the offseason, what's the biggest one? The biggest one is arguably maybe the Cowboys trading for George Pickens, right? Like, you think about that for a second. The Cowboys, from an offensive line and pass catcher standpoint, have added Tyler Booker and George Pickens. The Commanders have added Laramie Tunsil and Deebo Samuel. Now, these four players all have pros and they all have cons, right? Like, we all understand that. I've listed the cons relative to George Pickens. I was against the trade, right? Just to continue to be straight up with you all. Name one thing the Giants have done that matches this. In fact, let's pull this up. Let's look at the Giants offseason very quickly here, because context matters, and maybe I'm forgetting something. Maybe something isn't being remembered off the top of my head. Let's go from the beginning of January 1/1/2025, and let's go New York Giants, and we'll do all transactions. Shout out to our friends at Spotrac who do this for us. Here we go. Here's everything the Giants have done this offseason. Let's go all the way back to January. And here we are. All right. Daniel Bellinger. I mean, okay. Name any of these players. I would challenge you to name that are of the sizable impact that Tyler Booker, George Pickens, Laramie Tunsil, or Deebo Samuel. Just talking about players within the division. And we're talking about just offensive players here. I'm scrolling. We're into March, getting close to free agency. Chauncey Golston was cool. That was a bummer, obviously. Stone Forsythe, is that where you're going to go? I mean, Lil Jordan Humphrey, Zach Pascal, Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston. These are the moves. These are what keeps you on par. Jackson Dart obviously was the big one. Cam Scatterboot, the biggest one. I mean, again, I think you could argue that the gap that already existed has only grown because of what the Cowboys and Commanders have done this offseason versus what the Commanders have done. Look, we all see our teams through rose-colored glasses. I'm not in any way, above admitting that. I think we all understand that. We've all been there. We've all done that on some level. We're still actively doing it, right? Like, even in this conversation, I've probably promoted the Cowboys a little bit too much. There's that homer bump. We all grade on a curve in that sense. But you cannot tell me that the Giants have a better offensive roster than the Cowboys do at this point in time. I will hate on the Cowboys decision-making process quicker than anybody. And you certainly cannot tell me with a straight face that they have a preferable quarterback situation, even if you factor the contractual side of things. It just can't be true. It's not true. It's not true on this planet or any of the ones in ours. My son loves the planets. I can tell you anything and everything about planets because he can tell you anything and everything about planets. And of all the anything and everything I can tell you about any planet in our solar system, I'm including Pluto in that because I'm not a jerk. On none of them is it true that the Giants have a more preferable quarterback situation to the Dallas Cowboys. Not a single one. I checked. I double checked. Cool. But really, these exercises are fun and interesting. It's not as fun and interesting when a team in the division is the defending Super Bowl champions. Like, that kind of makes it suck a little bit. So that was a bit of a bummer that the Eagles, are just like the best. But it's weird how that's kind of a good thing because it helps you discount somebody like Jalen Hurts because you're like, well, you're not really that awesome. You just are part of a team that's the best. Or Nick Sirianni, you're not really that awesome. You're just part of a team that's the best. We're willing to give Howie Roseman all the flowers and everybody else just a few, just a couple of flowers for everybody else that isn't Howie Roseman. Yeah. So let's get out of here. All right, let's go ahead and let's just do this thing. Let's call it a day. And let's say that we'll get back together on Thursday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. and hope for no technical difficulties that day, because that was crazy. I don't know what happened on the computer, technical internet side of things, but it was a weird way for the conversation to start. But thank you to everyone who powered through and who hung out with me while we were battling the internet gremlins. My name is RJ Ochoa. You can follow me on social media: X, Instagram, Threads at RJ Ochoa, TikTok RJ.Ochoa. Search for RJ Ochoa on the Book of Faces, on LinkedIn, on Blue Sky. Email is rj.ochoa@sbnation.com. For now, I bid you all adieu. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Short week, obviously. Again, thank you to all of you who have served our country and those of you who are connected to people who serve. We simply cannot thank you enough. But yeah, let's go ahead and let's get out of here. So I hope you eat something delicious and nutritious that brings you lots of joy and happiness. And I can't wait to see you again, which will be on Thursday. Thanks so much for hanging out, everybody. We'll see you next time.